we've heard about product managers. So why the word technical in front of product manager?
Right now, I'm actually a technical program manager, and there are two roles which are called, like, one is technical program manager, one is technical product manager, and there is some interaction between those roles. And different companies use those terms differently.
Mhm,
If you don't mind, I will start by making this distinction
mhm,
because that is the question that I get a lot.
mhm,
So both roles have to do, like, to start with, like, what is common, and I did both in my career. So I've been a technical product manager as well.
Oh.
So the difference is, so the product manager, the main focus is typically on defining a product and then selling a product. So the product management roles is focusing on what we're building, why we're building it, and how are we going to sell it. And then technical program management roles focus on actually working with different kind of engineers to actually build it. And in certain companies, as you can imagine, you actually don't need technical program managers because the products are relatively simple or simple enough to be able to afford, like, product managers just go and work directly with engineers and just do it. So where you need to have program managers is when something is complex enough so that you have to have a separate person to do coordination among different engineering teams. I'll give you a couple of examples of where it might be required. So one of the products I've been working on actually required um, um, I think 11 different engineering teams sitting in under three different vice presidents in the organization, and basically, like, product managers, like, they don't want to do that because they're too busy. Like, they have a lot of work related to defining what the product is, like, and making sure that there is a product market fit, etc. So as I said, if there is a small enough engineering team and it's more or less consolidated, you don't need program managers. So that's why you mostly see program managers either in the corporate world or in hardware. Actually, you have a lot of program management and hardware, just because you need to do, like, very detailed planning. With hardware, you can't iterate quickly. If you screw up the design and you build something wrong, the cycle to fix it is usually very expensive and takes a year.
As you were talking, I was taking a lot of notes. So it's a good clarification because to add to the confusion, besides product and program, there's also project manager, right? So like there's so many P words in the tech field.
Absolutely. And project and program sometimes is used interchangeably. There is a textbook definition that project is an effort that has a goal and time bound, essentially, and program is a collection of projects that share resources. Sometimes this is the case. Sometimes people use the word program loosely, meaning like just a big project. So it is very natural to be confused, and even in the industry, there are companies. I think Airbnb at some point decided that they didn't want to have program managers anymore, and everybody had a title of product manager. So even like former program managers became product managers, which I do feel like this distinction is useful, and they're all, at least in the big organization or bigger organization, these roles are pretty distinct, and both roles are common in a way that you have to be a technical person because you're building a technical product,
Yeah.
and also you have to be good with people, and you have to be good with ambiguity and managing organizational politics and organizing people's work, but then again, focus is quite different. So you either can focus on like defining what to build, and or you can focus on, like, if you, like, for example, me, I found I did both jobs at certain points, and I realized that I am less interested in ideation and defining a product and working with sales and talking to too many customers, and instead I'm like, okay, I just tell me what you want to build, and I want this something to be complex, and I just want to work with my engineers to build it. So that's what gets me going.
What types of engineers do you work with? As in, are they all in-house? Are they remote? Is it a mixture of the two?
In my current role, they're all in-house, which doesn't mean that they're geographically in the same place.
Mhm.
I do work with teams in India, here in the US, in Santa Clara, where I am. I have a team in Australia.
Wow.
I do work with engineers from Israel. So, like, they're
Wow.
quite across the globe. But I worked for big banks for almost 15 years. And in banking, I worked a lot with outsourced engineering and with contract-based work. So I used to have a job where I didn't have a single engineer in house, and everything was contract-based and outsourced.
I've done that before. So I know how it feels. Let's start from the beginning. So you grew up, and as you were growing up, were you interested in tech, or was it something you fell into?
Yeah, I got into tech quite early. I My father was working like sort of in tech. He also worked for financial services for a long time. He's retired now. So I we got like our first computer at home. I think I was 11 back then, so it was 1995 or so, even like pre-internet essentially. So I started by playing video games. But my grandfather, who lived in Odessa in nowadays Ukraine, but when I was born, it was all like USSR. He was a professor at the university, and he was teaching like essentially computer science. And he introduced me to, when I was a kid, to programmable calculators. And he obviously also had a computer at home, and their home was full of like computer science books and all those like old languages like COBOL and whatever like what was there. So yeah, so I think that does run in the family, and I got exposed to computers pretty early. And when I was 13, I started taking computer programming classes, and I think I was lucky, and I got into like I started with learning C and C++ right away, which like many people learned more simple languages like BASIC or Pascal, and we're like, okay, we're going straight into C++, and that basically made me employable pretty quickly. So I got my first real job after the first year of college, and it wasn't like it was a real job. So I worked for a small startup, just 5 people,
Wow.
but they were like, okay, like that's what you have to build, like just go and build it.
Wow. And so back then, were most schools not teaching C++, or is C++ standard?
I don't think it was standard for kids. So
Oh.
I somehow managed to get to that was obviously an extracurricular activity. I had to travel like an hour to get
Wow.
there. It was a small school downtown, and yeah, I think I think I got lucky. That's because they were teaching, the language that was actually actively used and still used in the industry.
I see. And so what was your official major in college?
Naturally, I started by going into computer science, or even more focused, I went into cybersecurity. And frankly speaking, back then, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, I've been doing like computer programming since I was 13. I was pretty good at it. And like my friend went to computer science, and I went to computer science as well. Um, and what happened is that I realized pretty quickly that I was bored, and the school wasn't a great fit for me. And moreover, I actually didn't want to learn more. Again, I was like back then, I was basically hireable already. And what I realized, that what they were teaching me there, computer science wise, wasn't like, it was like super theoretical, which I'm actually like later I understood, like, yeah, like there is some benefit into learning that. But like, long story short, like it didn't feel like a great fit. So I got a job after the first year, and I ended up in my second and third year of college, I ended working nearly full time, and also studying full time. And I got my first burnout in my life, third year of college, and I dropped out. I was pretty arrogant back then, and I was like, who needs college? Like, I already have a job. And like, I was one of the very few people like in my class who had a real job. And I felt like I was 20 or something, 21 maybe, and probably 20. And I felt I already knew everything I needed to know. And I dropped out. I kept working, and I quit the job in a couple of years and started my own startup. Which didn't work out either. So to go back to the college question, my father actually convinced me that I needed a degree, and both he and my mom were like super persuasive. And I ended up, okay, if I have to do that, I'll rather like go and learn something that I don't know. So I ended up majoring in finance.
Oh, wow. Smart. That's why you ended up doing so much of the technical work for banking institutions and finance.
Yeah, basically that was what was happened. So when my startup didn't work out, I was like, okay, I have a finance degree, and I am doing I'm doing software development. So why don't I go and work for a bank? And that was a good combination. And I ended up being in different banks for almost 15 years.
Wow. Okay. So the first job you had after college was the one where you programmed in C++, right?
Yep.
What were some of the languages you used after that?
So what I used, so I started with C++. Then I moved to work for telecom for a little bit, and that was actually pure C. So and then when I moved to banking, I realized that banking. So in banking, I wasn't doing that much programming. I started as a business analyst, and then I moved to project management and program management. So, but the languages that we used, quite a few. So Java was pretty popular. I worked a lot with mainframes. So all the because all the consumer operations back then were powered by mainframes. And mainframe, I think the main language was COBOL. Because it was created in 1960s, 1970s, and then that never actually like replaced. I think nowadays most banks have actually moved away from mainframes, and they finally, in the last couple of decades, they replaced a lot of them, but not all. There is still, I was told, the problem with mainframes, you don't actually have a lot of developers nowadays who learn those languages. And it's not fancy to learn something that was created 50 years ago. There is one university in India that specializes in teaching mainframe programming. So that's why most of those like mainframe job nowadays, I think they're in Hyderabad in India, because that's the
Oh,
only university in the world that like found this niche. And they're like, okay, if you come to us, we'll teach you how to program like COBOL, PS2, like whatever database it's using, I already forgot. And then you will, like, you're almost guaranteed to get a job to work one of those banks that still have those mainframes. And not just banks, actually. I think airlines are also like actively using mainframes, and probably some other industries as well.
wow. Was it hard for you to learn the mainframe language, or was it pretty
I
easy?
didn't have to learn it per se. So I never had to learn it to the extent of like to be able to like write code.
Makes sense.
So when you're like a business analyst, system analyst, project manager, as a like you have to be technical enough to understand the limitations, and basically like the way I like to manage, like my usual motto is like I should know everything at least at the level of like a junior engineer. So I need to understand kind of what challenges my engineers are working with, what are the limitations of the systems and languages we're working is, what are the trade-offs. That just makes it easier. But I never had to. So it's with most languages, understanding general principles is enough to be able to like read like the code. Sometimes you have to Google, but now you can probably ask ChatGPT. But yeah, it's much easier if you have a good engineering background. It's much easier to read the code than to actually write the code.
When I met you, were you still doing the financial institution type of program management, or was that another phase of your life?
I think when you met me, I was working for a startup,
Oh, so
and
you went back into the startup world.
that was a fintech startup that I went to after my last banking job, and essentially not that much different, much smaller team. And that was actually a phase in my life when my job was closer to product management than to program management, because when the team is smaller, it's like you are spending more time like defining what to do,
Yeah.
rather than coordinating like different teams to build it. So, but it was a mix.
Right before I met you, that's sort of what I fell into, because I thought I was just like program managing or even project managing. But because the team was so small and the owners of the product didn't really know what they were doing, eventually I realized, wow, I got to be more of a product manager. And then where the whole product fell apart was I was trying to bring in someone who was like, he's trained as a product management, but then they didn't want to put any more money into it. So it's like I felt like I finally found the right thing, he can be product manager, I can be program manager and do other things like social media, which I'm good at. And then we finally felt like we found the right team. But by that point, the owners of the product were fed up with it, so they went another direction. So yeah, I guess it's a common thing in the tech world. If it's a small enough team, you're going to be product manager if you're in that field.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. So essentially, I would say project and program managers are oftentimes we just do what we have to do. And I've been in situations in my life when the usual triad is you want to have an engineering lead, and product manager and the program manager. And you work as a triad, and everybody does like their job.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I found myself in a situation, for example, when there was no engineering lead. Like there was an engineering like director and somebody fairly senior, but there was nobody who would manage engineers just day to day. So I ended up like playing much more of an engineering lead role and coordinate with like individual tasks with individual engineers, which usually program managers don't do, right? Program managers typically work on like on a little bit higher level.
Yeah.
And in platform teams, so whenever something is like a data platform or some other sort of platform, in platform teams, oftentimes there is no product manager. And there are actual program management roles that are very open about it. And they're like, hey, we're looking for a program manager, but there will be no product manager. So you would have to do this part of work as well. And this part of this work is essentially shared between a program manager and an engineering lead, and they both define what needs to be done, and you don't need a dedicated product manager. So I find that nowadays in tech world, you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
That is very, very important, both personal and for the organization. And the more flexible you are, the better you are in adapting to whatever particular startup or a particular corporation or a particular role, even what the limitations you have to work with.
I remember when it hit me like a truck when, I have to adapt and add to my role, because at first, I was just giving the engineers, okay, this is what's needed. And I realized, they actually need it laid out much, much more. Right. And then I was like, oh no, I got to learn. I got to educate myself. I got to learn how to communicate better. Got to learn the process. So yeah, I think that was the fun part of working in tech, is that because especially if you're on a smaller team, you have to be adaptable. You keep yourself on your toes. You have to really keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hung out. We did the acting classes, which was awesome. So during the time when you were doing your acting classes, that's when you had taken the break from that fintech company, right?
So this fintech company didn't work out. So they did hire a bunch of people for anticipating growth, and that what happens with startups. So they get funding, they hire people, the growth doesn't happen, and then they let people go. So that's almost expected when you start working for a startup.
Yeah.
It's way less certain. And that's what happened. And I took this opportunity to take a few months off between jobs and just enjoy my life, enjoy Santa Monica, and take acting classes.
Then you landed this role, which brought you up more towards Northern California. So tell me about the process with this. I remember, I think even when we were taking acting classes, you were in the interview process, right? So how was that?
Interview process is not just in tech, but I feel everywhere. It's almost a pain. So if you're interviewing for a corporation, you should expect at least 6-ish rounds of interview, sometimes more. A typical cycle is you have a 15 or 30 minutes with a recruiter, and they do the initial screening. Then you have an interview with either a hiring manager or somebody who is doing the initial assessment. And then if the initial assessment is good, then there is some sort of a it's called the on-site. Some companies call it the loop, but essentially you are talking to 4, 5, 6 people. I've never had 6. I think I usually have either 4 or 5. And then sometimes there is a final round. That's more typical for smaller companies, but sometimes it's a final round when you talk to, let's say, a VP of whatever function program management is reporting to. And sometimes it's a dedicated function. Sometimes it reports into engineering. Sometimes it's actually reports to product. That's an interesting part as well. So that's one of the questions I always ask. So what is the organizational structure, and where does program management actually reports to?
It's so funny because the process that most people associate with tech, I experienced it once back in the day when I was going to get a CX job, customer experience job. So it shouldn't have been this many layers. What it was so many rounds. And then I had, I guess you called it the loop, but an on-site one where I talked to a few people together. And then I had a final round where I talked to one last person. I think that one last person didn't like me. So it was like, I was like, I wasted so much time. Like I talked to so many people, they all like me, and then I rubbed the last person wrong somehow. But yeah, even when I worked at ByteDance, right, which I'm sure ByteDance is more organized now because they've grown so much and they've internationalized. But back in the day when I worked at ByteDance, they had just started expanding in America. So like my ByteDance interview was like HR was the first interview. And then I think it was like one of my potential team members. And then it was like a VP. And then it was the director I'd be working under. And then like the manager I'd be working under. So it was like very direct. And yeah, it wasn't even as intense as that CX interview, but I guess if it were any other tech company, I probably would have experienced what Andrei went through.
I mean, even in your case, you still had, it sounds like you had at least 5 interviews. So it's just the difference is that yours were more like you worked with an actual team you were interviewing for.
Yeah.
What many companies are doing nowadays, they are doing so-called pipeline hiring, which means that you are not being interviewed for a particular role, but hey, we know that we're hiring dozens of program managers, we're hiring dozens of software engineers, we're hiring dozens of like UX people. So, and that's why like you're not hiring for a particular role, you're just putting people through this process, and those who are like who pass, they're basically getting role matched. And depending on a particular role, even within one company, I was interviewing with one big tech company, and I had 2 separate interviews, and I failed both. So, but one of them was a pipeline hiring, like, and another one was a focused hiring for a role. And in one case, I was interviewing with like a set of generic people who had no idea like which team I'm gonna end up with. And in another case, I was interviewing for a particular role with a particular manager, and I was talking to people who actually like either in the direct reporting line for the role, or people who are going to work with the role.
I love this concept of pipeline hiring because a lot of times, at least back when I was in the corporate world, they expected employees to define their roles a little bit themselves, right? To adapt as the company needed whatever. So I like the idea of, okay, let's see what his or her skills are, his or her communication is, et cetera, qualifications. And then we'll fit him or her once we know that, okay, this person is capable of functioning, capable of learning. I like that. So I hope and I think companies are going to do more of this pipeline hiring.
Yeah, and you have to have some scale for that. So think about it this way. So if you have a company that like Google or Apple or Facebook, so all those companies have I think give or take like tens of thousands or like even over 100,000 employees now. So if you have 100,000 employees and let's say your attrition rate is 10% a year, that means that you just need to replace 10,000 people every year. So you always need software engineers. You always, if you have 1,000 TPMs, like again, every given year, you'll need like 100 just to replace the attrition. So it makes sense. But if you have a small company and you're hiring, I don't know, 1 TPM every 2 years, then like you can't have a pipeline just because you don't have enough demand.
It's interesting how just a lot of concepts have sort of evolved. Obviously, a lot of people know I haven't really been in the corporate world since I left ByteDance, and I've partly worked for that startup that I told you about, where I was like, oh, I had to go from project manager to product manager, but that was not even full time, right? So the other thing, Andrei, I don't know if you experienced this when you were interviewing, and maybe now your company, as it screens more employees, does this, but this year, I randomly applied to a job, and it wasn't a technical job at all. But my first interview was done by AI, an AI program.
I haven't interviewed for a while. I've heard that was the case nowadays, and more people are doing that. But unfortunately, I don't have any personal experience. What was yours? Was it better or worse than being interviewed by a person?
I think it was probably worse because at least if you're interviewed by a person, even if it's online like this and it's just through video, you can look at their expressions, right? AI, I'm sure it's trained to be nice to most people. So you don't know if your answers were good, but it's programmed to give you good feedback, right? So you might think you aced it, but maybe it's taking notes in the background, be like, this person sucks.
Well, hopefully at some point we'll get to a point when like my AI is going to talk to their AI, and they will like, my AI knows me and what I know, and their AI knows the company and knows what they're also open, and then like just my agents would talk to their agents, and we will end up in only having like a better matches and human to human interviews. I'm
I
very
think so.
hopeful. I'm very hopeful that it will get to this point, because definitely the process is broken, especially with the AI. The pipelines nowadays are crazy. People are like auto applying to thousands of jobs. So any given job, I talk to our recruiters as well, but any given job gets like hundreds and hundreds of applications, and there's no real way to tell who is good and who is not good, or even to give a chance to even to 10% of these people. If 1,000 people apply, you can't interview 100 people for a role. That's just too much. But I do hope that again on the next step of the evolution, and then again like I think my chat GPT knows me like pretty well by now. So if it can go and advocate for me and just use this knowledge to maybe talk to some recruiting AI and kind of try to see if what it knows about me matches what they need. Maybe it will get us to a better world.
I think 10 years ago, when I was still working in the corporate world, I told people who back then were like, Jerry, for example, college students, like, Jerry, what's advice you can give me? I told them back then, I said, you have to understand your own brand, right? You have to be your own spokesperson. You have to be able to give people positive things to find about you if they search you online and stuff. I think now, 10 years later, it's not just your own brand, but you need to use AI to have them be like your agents, your managers. Like they need to be your spokesperson. So that's the difference now. You need to build that whole package and take advantage of AI so they can do the heavy lifting for you. They can advocate for you, so you don't have to do that day-to-day stuff that most people don't even enjoy anyways.
Yeah, I feel it can go either way. So depending on how I think about it, I feel that we're either going into this like techno optimistic world where again AIs would do everything for us and just will do it better than we do, and the other one is that everybody just gets so like exhausted by having to deal with AI that instead actually more and more things will go offline, and people would consciously say, okay, like, we are not doing AI, and they will emerge like a whole separate set of pipelines. So yes, there will be like a formal recruitment, but essentially what will be happening, like it would be like person-to-person connection that would actually get you the interview, and also like resumes wouldn't. So that is happening to some extent even now, but there was this equilibrium for quite a long time in the past couple of decades when having a good resume, you could reasonably expect some decent conversion rate. So depending on how good your resume was, you could expect like anywhere between 2% and 10% conversion rate. So hey, if I want to get 20 interviews, I need to send like between like 100 and a few hundred. I need to apply like between 100 and a few hundred jobs, and then I can reasonably expect this pipeline to work out for me. Nowadays, I think this assumption is no longer valid, and you can apply to 10,000 jobs and like never get called. But again, that's the nature of this world. So like the equilibrium is broken, but we will eventually get to another equilibrium. We just don't know what it's going to look like yet.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, there was a little period too, maybe a 5-year period, where there was another equilibrium where if you were really good about presenting yourself, you could let the people come to you. You could let the right recruiters, the right companies come to you. So like, for example, that's how I got recruited to ByteDance. I just had a really good LinkedIn back in the day, back when I really cared. So that also is broken now. So yeah, like you said, so many equilibriums need to be established. And there is a trend. I even see it on LinkedIn all the time and on YouTube. People talk about, okay, back are the days of in person, knocking on doors and kind of like that Hollywood model. Like you got to know someone, right? But that also leads to another source of frustration, which I see a lot in Gen Z. Gen Z talks about like the passive aggressiveness. It's like people might even get you started and then like, oh, never hear back from them. Or like people will agree on something and then, oh, you get ghosted. So like you have that other flip side of the negatives too. So like nothing's perfect, of course. And whatever new equilibrium emerges, there's going to be negatives. But yeah, we're this industry, the entire job industry is definitely changing so fast, is all I can say.
Well, at the end of the day, like you have a problem that is unsolvable in general when you have too many people competing for too few jobs.
Yeah.
Like this competition is gonna be ugly. Like you can't like and when we're in a job market like that, there is no good solution that would avoid the frustration because eventually some people would not have good job opportunities. So
Andrei, here's a good question for any young people watching our channel. Looking back, is there anything you wish you did differently, or is there anything you wish you knew when you first started your journey in tech?
yeah, I feel if I could redo my own career in assuming like the same conditions hold and 2010 and 2020s that I could do it even like 2000s because I started in early 2000s. I probably would just stay in software engineering and I wouldn't go into project management. It seemed like a good idea back then, but careers are probably like at the end of the day what I see it's better to be like career wise, purely career wise, it's better to be a good engineer and then being so project managers are more like generalists and this market, like the tech market, rewards specialists more.
Yeah.
This actually might be changing. I don't really know. So that's one of the unknowns about AI.
Yeah.
There is this hypothesis that maybe we're moving into like this new way of development software where you will need more generalists and like generalists powered by AI would be the most productive. But that has not been the case by and large in the past few decades. So these past few decades, specialists are much more rewarded and the most like highly paid professionals are like very like niche specialists who are really good in something in demand. So yeah, if I could redo it, I would probably definitely move to the US faster than I did. So I think that I wasn't even thinking about that, but when I was working for Motorola back in I think 2004 to 2007, and technically instead of doing all these like jumps and like dropping out of college and the startup and all the like stuff that sounded like fun and interesting back then, I think a more traditional career actually would have made me way more money by now. So if I just like instead of like switching to like banking and then going back to tech essentially, because that's what has happened, right? I started in tech, then I mean Motorola is sort of like a telecom but mix of like tech and telecom.
Yeah.
So I started there, then I moved to financial services, then I moved to like fintech, then I moved back to tech. If I could redo that, I wouldn't drop out of college. I would finish this degree. I would have a computer science degree, spend less time doing that, stay with Motorola, move to the US in my late 20s, and probably by now I would have retired.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah,
Makes
because
sense.
all the golden years in technology, I would definitely like if I could spend them in Silicon Valley. Like by now, I definitely could have retired. But again, hindsight is 2020. So like I know now how like the market ended up like being and what Silicon Valley ended up being. It was not at all obvious in like in 2000s. If anything, like it was like 2008, like financial crisis, and it was I think even before like tech stocks started to overperform the market in the way they did.
I have like a similar type of analysis if I had to do it over again, because I think, unlike you, when I was in high school, I didn't enjoy programming. I took 2 years of programming, but back then it was hard if you were stuck on a problem. It's not like now all the answers are on Stack Overflow, or you just look up a library on W3 Code or something. You're going to find the answer somehow if you're smart enough. Back then, it's like when high school, the internet was barely there. If you were stuck, you had the teacher and your textbook and then your own logical reasoning. It was really frustrating.
Yeah.
If only I could have predicted that, okay, just stick to this 5 more years, and then like people would be able to find the answers online. If I knew where this was going, then I would have stuck to it. I just didn't realize that, oh, it would so quickly have blossomed. But that also was sort of the start of its saturation slash its sort of, I don't want to call it downfall, but it's like not as appealing as before type of thing, is that it's so saturated now. But like the golden years, right? Like you said, like I could have taken advantage of those golden years too, where it was like not too much knowledge was available everywhere, but like if you had the knowledge, you could really make a lot of money.
I think that's part of the problem. You never know like where the golden years are going to be. So it's pretty obvious what has happened. But even now, so if you ask people, so many people are saying like AI is obviously like one of those areas. But there are enough people who are saying that, hey, like AI is a bubble, and we're going to have like the new the .com crash, probably .ai crash is going to happen now. A lot of people are saying that AI is a great thing, but we hit the wall with like trying to reach AGI. So like the improvements are marginal, and the real like we're spending a lot of money on all that. Like all those technologies are super expensive, both to develop those foundational models and running them. And you can't like automate as many jobs as you thought you would be. Like even like keeping aside the question what all those people are supposed to do and how we're supposed to feed all those people if we automate everything, but or like what kind of a I don't know basic universal income we're supposed to have. Even keeping all that aside, the level of certainty like the level of forward-looking certainty is fairly low. So we don't really like it's always so hard to predict like what do you need to do, or like whether you should stay or whether you should like try and go into a different industry. That's like you never know. So I guess like my take on everything, I think that education will keep being important. And even I've been like, one thing I learned like in my almost like over 20 years of like working now, I've been hearing that, oh, traditional education is so outdated, it's gonna die, like it's already dying. And it has been like in this state for a long time, and still people with good degrees from good universities are doing much better. Just like this is just the case. So despite all like despite all these things, and like traditional like Ivy League being under attack, it's still like I don't know, I feel that it's just so difficult for us to like take a pack of 100 resumes and actually being able to pick 10. We tend to go to this like more simple factors, like, okay, what university did you go to? And that's just that's just how it ends up being. So I feel that will keep being important. Other than that, I feel that prioritizing like I tend to think that prioritizing like money in the short term is a losing strategy. So especially early in the career, you want to be in you want to do something exciting, because the worst thing that can happen with people in their early 20s, if they end up in in a boring corporation and they're working on something that nobody else wants to work on. So they do get hired, they do get paid, and it might be a decent salary. But I saw that a lot saw that a lot in software engineering and banking. You hire like young graduates, and one of them would go and work on a data platform plus AI plus something else, and another one will end up like with a team that is supporting a 20-year old I don't know, risk management system. 5 years down the line, one is as a manager, and another one is still doing the same job. So essentially, they started at the same place, recruited from the same university, but just like probably equally smart. But one was working on something that was really exciting, something in demand, like learning a lot, and another one was doing like boring stuff that nobody wanted to do, and the outcomes was so vastly different. So trajectory is more important than where you are right now. So being on the right trajectory is more important than like making the most money you can at this particular moment.
I think those are all very good pieces of advice. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Hopefully retired and doing like I don't know. I feel that that's a really great question. So I'm thinking about it a lot, and the same, like, my own advice applies to me. So I'm thinking a lot about, okay, what trajectory I am on, and what happens if I stay in the corporate world doing pretty much the same job, versus what other things I can do. And I would really like what I'm trying to do right now. I'm looking for like to get to a point in my life where I'm like I'm able to have, like, more leadership and decision making authority. And I know it's a cliche, but I think that I'm a little tired of being like just a cog in the machine. And what exactly that means, and what exactly like how exactly it's going to play out, is hard to tell. It might be another startup, so being a bigger fish in a smaller pond. It might be just figuring out, like, starting something of my own, or figuring out a way to be in a more like leadership decision making position in one of the tech companies, or something completely out of the box. Something like, I'm thinking a lot about politics. I like politics. Um I've always liked politics, so I might end up in a like doing something there. Yeah. One other thing that is really exciting, to show you how my brain works. I've been thinking about, like, hey, can I do like sort of like defense technology, so I've been thinking, hey, can I join the army, like the part of the army that actually works on tech, because there is a lot of like AI adoption, like AI security, autonomous everything. So if I could join something like that, and I think like those have really interesting applications, and they have a lot of interesting projects to work on. Yeah, and so part of, like, when I'm looking at potential next steps, I'm looking at some of the army contractors, some of the startups that are doing like a lot of like autonomous, like, drones and autonomous vehicles. A lot of interesting things happening there. So I don't know. I feel that always, like, it's always a trade-off between how happy I am doing what I'm doing, how good my work-life balance is, i.e., how happy I am, like, doing everything else that is not my job. And the third consideration is how well am I paid, and what my, like, when and how I am likely to retire doing whatever I am doing. And it's always
Yeah.
balancing these three.
Very few people have found the solution or the balance to that, but it's good to understand, okay, there's a necessity to find a balance somewhere.
In my opinion, the game is rigged, and we do live in oligarchical capitalism,
Yeah.
and more than before,
Yeah, more than
the
before.
power of corporations in the past few decades has become uh, way bigger than it used to be,
Yeah.
and the game is rigged towards like corporations and their profits.
Yeah.
So getting like getting rich by working is getting more and more difficult.
Yes,
That's that's
100%.
that's the reality, unfortunately. So the whole what we've seen in the past like 20 years, uh, basically all the growth went towards people who already have assets,
Yes.
and almost nothing went towards people who uh, don't. And that's why we're having such a problem now with Gen Z, and the prospects for like the younger generations are in debt. And they're earning like the rent, like everybody's renting, and the proportion of the income that goes towards rent is like it just keeps climbing up. The
Yes.
prospects of buying like a home is more and more unachievable.
Yeah.
I've just seen recently that I do live it close to San Jose. In order to like the income that is required to buy a house, I don't remember exactly the metric, but basically the income required to buy an average house in San Jose is like 500,000 a year.
Wow.
It, it is insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
And the average I don't remember where I got this one from, but I think the average age of a home buyer now is of the first time home buyer now is 38.
I believe that. I 100% believe that.
Yeah. So that is not normal.
Yeah.
That is not normal. So that is one of the reasons why actually I'm like even more excited to go into politics, because
Yes.
we do have lots of problems like on a societal level that we
Yeah.
will have to solve in the next couple of decades.
Sort of a tangent, but very related, is that the fertility rates in a lot of countries are going down. And part of it is some of these stresses. If people are spending all their time working and most of their income goes to rent or goes to food or whatever, how are they going to have time or the resources for a kid?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, most people just feel they can't afford a kid,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if they were to have a kid, they would be staying in a one bedroom indefinitely, and that's just going to be a miserable life for themselves and their kids.
Yeah.
So, and I totally get it, and that's a big problem to solve.
Yeah.
And I think the good part of it, there is a very interesting convergence between part of the left, the sort of like the Bernie Sanders left, and the MAGA right, like Tucker Carlson sort of right, basically saying the same thing.
Same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, if you listen to what Bernie is saying versus what Tucker is saying, they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That is so the next political shift is probably going to be like there is going to be such a huge realignment.
Yeah. I
Such a
agree.
huge realignment, and
I agree.
that's going to be fun.
It will be fun. The people who thought that Trump was a populist, but then it turns out he really wasn't. He was just helping the corporations. Those populist people hopefully really realize, okay, like there's an artificial division between us, left and right. We're actually a whole movement. And I think once the populist movement actually really converges together, it's going to be a very powerful force.
Yeah, definitely. There will be like pro corporate, pro like status quo party that is now actually both political parties
Both
that
political
align on
parties,
that.
exactly.
And probably like, and that's why right now like a lot of people are like, we don't care, like Democrats or Republicans, they're the same, right?
Yeah.
They vote like they essentially like they debate about smaller things,
Yes.
like, and they focus on things like transgender issues, and which are all important stuff. But by and large, most people do care about, hey, I'm in my 20s, can I buy a house and
Yeah.
have a family
Yeah.
and have a
Yeah.
kid? That is way more important for most people than whether or not transgender athletes are allowed in the competitions.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. The other thing I was going to say is the sort of military stuff, the autonomous stuff. That stuff is like, yeah, there's always going to be a need for that, especially unfortunately, our world's tending towards multipolarity, right? And so like multipolar worlds are not too stable. So unfortunately, just maybe it's like a very bitter pill for people to swallow, but there will be more conflicts the rest of the century than we want. So yeah, the investment into weapon systems and stuff like that, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We are definitely like what we're seeing right now is not the end, it's just the beginning. And as much as people like Donald Trump are trying to say, hey, I'm here to stop all wars, it is just not like, as you said, right? Multipolarity means more conflict. We don't have enough conflict when we have strong, like, unipolar or bipolar world, then it's relatively stable. Otherwise, there's always a conflict, and that's where we are right now.
Exactly. So obviously we went very deep in this talk for everyone watching, but I still am, I guess the word that Andrei uses, I'm still a tech optimist, and I still have an optimistic bent to the future. But I think the key is, we really mentioned this, but look at where the trends are, right? Both in your own personal job prospects and in the world. And then have to find, okay, how do I wiggle there? How do I educate myself? How do I get there?
That's probably the best advice we can give to anyone.
So, Andrei, I think we should bring you back. I really enjoyed this talk. And in the future, if viewers see this or want even more talk of a specific topic we mentioned in this, we'll bring Andrei back for that. So we'll bring Andrei back and talk about stuff depending what viewers want to talk about. Because obviously we can go deep. Like we could probably really go deep into C++ or something like that if people want to do that, right? But so yeah, we'll base it on what people want.
Absolutely, and to whoever is watching, if you feel like you're inspired by some part of this conversation, if you feel you have more questions, yeah, like let us know, and we can go. We can probably go into lots of subjects, from improving in chess to to how this world works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll definitely have to get you on my chess channel sometime. I don't think I've ever gotten you on my chess channel yet, so we'll do that in the future.
That sounds great too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, everyone, for watching.